I've got questions written up and everything.
Have you?
Yeah, this is almost professional. Oh, well, hello there. I'd like to take this opportunity to give you a parental advisory. And that being, we'd like to advise the parents of Jack that there be bad language from the beginning, the middle and the end. You've been warned.
That's what humour's for. It gets us over bad shit. If you can't joke about bad shit, there's no point joking about good shit.
Bus lanes annoy me. I'm stuck in traffic and a bus whips past me. All these poor people get home quicker than I do.
People say comedians that curse and comedians that don't curse, if you use fuck, you're getting an easy laugh. Let's see you go get a laugh with fuck so easily.
You go up to your baby, you can go up to your baby's face every day and you fuck you, baby, like right there every day, it wouldn't matter.
I love jokes so much. The buffet is basically an answer to the question, well, things are bad. How can we make it worse? How could we design a food-human interaction environment that's basically like driving your dog up to Petco, giving him money, and saying, why don't you go in and get whatever you think you should have?
Hello, bonjour, guten tag, and welcome to another episode of Sit Down to Stand Up. My name is Jack. I'm your host of this podcast. As always, welcome, and thank you for listening to this podcast. I know there is gazillions of podcasts out there you could be listening to, but if you're hearing my voice right now, it means you've chosen mine, so thank you. A few housekeeping duties as always. If you like the show, please leave us a review. 5 stars is phenomenal. 4 stars is really good too. Yeah, either of those would be great. If you don't like the show, that's fine too. Just delete it and forget you ever listened to it. Don't worry about reviews. Don't waste your time. Now, don't forget, subscribe to the podcast. That means every time I upload a new one, you'll get it straight into your inbox, and it'll be there for you to listen to. So if you are just joining us for the very first time, thank you so much indeed. Welcome. Quick update on what this is all about. I've worked in radio for just over a decade with some of the funniest people in the business in Australia, and I thought one day, why don't I have a go at stand-up comedy? You never know. It could be a disaster or it could work out great. You will find out which one that is very soon. And in the lead up to that, I'm talking to some of the country's funniest people, and also some comedians from around the world as well, on their road to comedy, why they got into comedy, how they write jokes, and just their processes in general, the best parts of being a stand-up comedy, the worst parts of being a comic, and everything in between. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. This week, I am joined by a very funny young man who I met when I moved to Adelaide, working commercial radio. His name is James McCann, and he's written a lot of plays. He writes for a lot of different websites and bits and pieces, which we chat about. So without further ado, please welcome James McCann. James McCann, thank you very much for joining me.
Good to... Hello. Good to be here. I was going to say. Good to be here. And then I thought...
Trying to make it as professional as possible, and we failed miserably to start with.
Commercial radio voice. I know I'm trying to do it, where it's just like... You know, you listen to people on commercial radio and they're so smooth and you're like, I don't know that you've said anything.
Well, you're on commercial radio these days on the weekends.
I am. I don't know how long that's going to last. I've never had...
Well, we did a show together for about 2 weeks or something.
Until we were kicked off air.
But that was rightfully so, because it was a mess.
It was a joyful mess that the people loved. They didn't do enough testing on that show.
But have they actually given you some people that know about radio now, haven't they?
Yeah, they've. Yeah.
Oh, well, we're going to talk about radio very soon, but the reason I've got you here is purely because of your comedy. James McCann, stand-up comedian, won several prestigious awards, apparently. You write for The Australian, Junkie, The Spectator, Pedestrian, news.com.au, and you are the composer.
And Jugs. And for Jugs. I'm a big fan of big old milky Jugs. And I write on that with great frequency.
It's one of your favourite ones. Yeah. You're also the composer of Wolf Creek, the musical, and The Sound of Nazis.
Yep, those are my 2 Nazi-related musicals, and also the sex crime musical. I'm just trying so hard to be broad and accessible. I'm so bad at it. Because you don't want to talk down to people. You don't want to be like, you're all idiots, I'm going to condescend to the plebs. But there's just like certain ways you got to think and talk. If you're going to talk to human beings who have normal life experiences.
How old are you now?
I'm 26 years old.
26 years old. How long have you been doing comedy for? Have you? I
started when I was 17.
What made you want to do comedy? Why did you think? Was it that whole thing of when you were at school you were the funny guy?
No, I've never been a funny person. In person, I don't think I'm a funny guy. Like, oh, well, we're ribbon and we're having a nice time, but I'm not like taking my shirt off and dancing around and being like, I'm not a naturally
You're not the
charismatic
class
person.
clown.
No, and I hated the class clown. All the way through school, I was like, guys, distracting from my learning experience.
Because you're a very
I'm here to grow.
you are a very smart individual. Like,
Nah, I think I've got really intelligent parents. I've read widely, and I think abstractly about high concept things, but I reckon I wouldn't have a huge IQ.
so okay, so well then, if you didn't consider yourself a funny guy,
Yeah.
you're reading all these abstract things and these deep, meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
Why comedy? Did you just find the humor in?
I was very depressed. I was a very, very depressed child. I was just super depressed. And then when I was about like 7 years old, I got that. It's like a guide to the Simpsons book where it's got it's got like the first 8 seasons, it's got the best joke and all the plots. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I remember how happy I was when I got that. And from there on out, I was like, I'm going to be a comedian.
So, as in, you wanted to do stand up, or you just wanted to write comedy?
At that point, I had no idea. I thought I would like work on the Simpsons. And now I can't dream of a worse job than working on The Simpsons. I would not want to touch that show as it currently stands with the longest comedy pole in the world. And then I saw Eddie Izzard when I was like 10 on a TV screen. I think my mum had a video. Again, I'm not a big fan of his now, but I just couldn't believe that all those people were there listening to what that man had to say and that he was bringing such happiness.
So, from 17, that's when you first did your proper gig?
That's when I first did. I did debating through high school. I think genuinely, I got good at comedy like a year ago. I would say like 6-7 years in. I'm not great, but I'm now like I can go in front of a room full of people and know deep down this is going to be a minimum 6 out of 10. It may be better, but that's the floor.
We've jumped a lot here though, because I want to quickly go back to obviously you said you wanted to become a comedian, and 17 you did your first stand up. Where was the first gig you did?
Was it the Rhino Room?
Oh, okay. I've been to the Rhino
It's getting
Room.
torn down, sadly.
Really?
So there'll be a new Rhino Room. But yeah, it was my first gig.
At 17 years old?
At 17 years old. And so I had 2 weeks to then assemble like a 5-minute stand-up set.
Okay, well, take me through that. So you've got 2 weeks to come up with a 5-minute stand-up set.
Yeah.
Well, how do you even begin?
I was terrified. I was so afraid.
Do you feel like the pressure forces you to come up with something?
I look back at what I came up with. I don't know how I got through the first. It was a comedy competition and I got through the first round. And I don't know how I did with those jokes. They were super bad.
So what were you focusing on? What was your sort of...
I think my opening line was like, I'm James McCann, and when I'm not out shredding it at the gym or reading very impressive books, I like to talk to the ladies. It's like some weird 17-year-old kid talking about how great it was. It resonated
Yeah.
a little bit. Man, I can remember so little because I chucked it out.
Yeah, right.
I did that like twice for the comedy competition, and then I never did that 5 minutes again. And then every week I would write a new 5 minutes. And
Do you have a focus when you're writing? Do you focus on one topic, or do you jump around?
I don't know. Like right now, when I'm like, I used to jump around, and any like little thought that would come to me, I would pull that out and put it on stage. And I was a lot more prolific like 2 years ago. For the rest of my comedy career, I would write and write and write, and just I think I had very little idea of what would be good.
Yeah.
So I could produce a lot, and then it was hard to tell what would be good.
Well, see, that's my other thing.
now
Is
I'm
like,
trying to,
you're
backwards.
writing stuff and you don't. I mean, how do you know if it's funny? I mean, you might go, I think that's funny, but
Yeah.
to the layman
honestly,
sitting there, because you do, as you
want to
said,
go
thinking.
through the last ones?
Yeah.
Here we go. We'll go the last like 2-3 ideas.
So you just make notes in your phone.
I make notes and then I run them past mainly the girlfriend. Here we go. Apartments are fucked. They're real small. They feel like prisons. You want to jump out of them and die. Because I'm staying with people's apartments while I'm here for the comedy festival.
It's very dark.
Okay, well that one might not be a goer.
Okay, well let's stick with that then. Let's with
We
what
can
you've
work
got
that
there.
apart. Apartments are
So how would you from there build a gag out of that?
I would probably try and build a story around it at this point.
Yep.
It's also good if you're in because you just don't know what kind of room you're going to have to do the joke in front of. And it's often a drunk room of people who don't want anything to do with you. So a good trick is to say sort of a shocking or subversive line off the top, just so people go, what's he talking about? And then that just buys you 30 seconds to get where you need to go.
Yeah, right.
Old mate Amos Gill, who I think is genuinely probably the best stand-up comedian in the country. And I'm not just saying that because
No,
we're the
I
same
think
radio
he's-
station.
I think
and
he's brilliant as
I'm
well.
staying at his apartment that makes me want to kill myself. He just did that for you, and now like I think about his bits, and it's all shocking lines.
Yeah.
Then you got, like, he goes, "Had my mum getting fucked.
Yeah.
Had sex on a bin once.
Yeah.
Shat in a girl's bag. Got jerked off by a bloke in a hot tub." And he'll just say a line that is explosive, and then people go, "Well, I don't know how I feel about that sort of behaviour." And then he'll walk it back, and he'll take you through it with really good gags. But as an audience, you are at least willing to listen to why someone has said that. That's a really good move.
It's a tough gig, like when you're on radio and stuff, getting feedback from the audience, that's always fun, isn't it? The internet. Just people are pretty nice when they're anonymous, aren't they? Love a bit of feedback. My first day on the show, first local boy to host it ever, here's the first feedback I got, 6:01 a.m. "Your voice is a dick and it's fucked my morning."
All right, so you did the stand-up thing. The first one you got, obviously you did a couple of competitions and bits and pieces. What made you start writing longer comedy bits like your musicals?
I think I'd gotten very bad at stand-up comedy. I was quite good at stand-up comedy for my first 2 years. And like a lot of doors opened and people were keen to have me on. I saw a performer called Dr. Brown, who's a really good French-trained clown, and I saw Sam Simmons, and I saw a couple other weird outsidey people. And I was so moved. I was like, I'm going to do that.
Oh,
this is the future. Abstract comedy.
You wanted to go off the wall.
Yeah. And I was at university and I was having what could charitably be described as a mental collapse. Because you just go to university. I had no religion, morality, whatever to hold me in check. And then all of a sudden you're reading the most difficult emotional books like There's No God and Life Has No Meaning Except Your Own. And then you're getting, a little more drunk than you otherwise would be. And then I got sick at one point. I got like a liver infection. So I'm like coughing all the time and I have no energy and I'm going to comedy at night and I'm just hating. And then I got really bad as a comedian for like 4 years. I was rotten.
So what made you get going if you were sucking for 4 years?
I didn't know that I sucked.
Yeah, right.
With the vividness of hindsight, I was like, man, people don't want to come to my show where I dress up as a nun and I shout about Monopoly for 2 hours. What's wrong with them? I thought when I wrote that idea, Nunopoly, how to play winning Monopoly and live a fulfilling life in Christ, which I do maintain. Of all the bad things I've done,
sounds like a hilarious concept.
I thought I was going to sell out RSLs. I was like, you know what? This is the show that gets James McCann like a commercial radio career.
Yeah,
they're going to want this, and they did not. So then I dropped out of university. I don't know why. And I started.
What were you studying at university?
I tried honours twice. I dropped out of honours twice. I dropped out of honours 1 year in classics. And then I dropped out in English literature because I thought it would be easier. And then I wrote Wolf Creek the Musical and The Nun Show.
You were right, okay.
With the lady I was with at the time.
Right, okay. So you were writing with a partner at the time?
Yeah. Demi Lardner.
Yeah.
And she totally came up with that idea. That was 100% her idea.
Yeah, right, okay.
I had never seen Wolf Creek.
Yeah.
I started writing songs for Wolf Creek the Musical before I'd seen it.
Right.
I was like, what's in it? And she was like, there's a rape shed. And I was like, all right, what's that? Welcome to the rape shed.
What the bloody hell are you mob doing out here? Scared the shit out of me.
So, where do you live?
Oh, I get around, Never know where I might pop up.
Yeah. So because obviously you play a lot of instruments. How many instruments do you play?
Saxophone, clarinet very badly, piano, accordion, and then
the accordion.
So any keyed instrument.
That says a lot about James McCann to everybody.
Well, my
he
mum
plays
had a
the
piano
accordion.
Yeah, it's a great instrument. People love the accordion. People can't get enough of it.
Did you write Sound of Nazis by yourself?
I did. I went and I wrote that.
Okay, so let's focus on that one.
So that I wrote. The original idea was that I would take The Sound of Music and all the bits that were spoken word sections would be songs, and all the bits that were songs would be spoken word sections. And it was going to be called The Music of Sound, and it's basically the show that it ended up being. That's what The Sound of Nazis is. It's an inverted Sound of Music. But then we applied for a festival, and the festival director said, "This is the worst title for a show I've ever seen. You will not put a show on at my festival
called The Sound of Nazis?
The Music of Sound."
Oh, he didn't like that one.
The Music of Sound. And then I called back and I said, The Sound of Nazis, and he was like, beautiful. So that was just... I then knew what the template had to be.
Okay.
So I could just like watch The Sound of Music again and again and go like, this scene has to happen and this has to be a song that's funny somehow.
Yeah.
This has to be dialogue that happens with two people talking under a gazebo where one is 16 and one is 17. How do I joke that up? And it was just smashing my head against a wall for about 2 months.
So you literally were watching The Sound of Music and going, I could make that funny.
I could make that funny. There's an opportunity there that can get a bit longer, that can get a bit shorter. And then I brought in, I had a rough script and we did a read through at the Rhino Room with like the 6 people that I knew I wanted to be in it. And then they were just super funny people.
So how do you even start? But how do you start writing a script?
I had an idea for the first scene, because the first scene of The Sound of Music it's in the Abbey. So Maria's up on the hills and she's singing. The hills are, and then they sing, "How do you solve a problem like Maria?" So instead of a song, "How do you solve a problem like Maria?" they're having a general meeting in our musical, and it's like, we've got to do something about this Maria. She is an absolute mess. And then, just because I'm an idiot, I was like, all right, one of them's going to be Italian, one of them's going to be Japanese, one of them's going to be Spanish. Or so, like, there was just an ethnically confused thing. And then I specifically, because I knew I had to come, I think I was back from Melbourne at that point, and I knew I needed to sit and write it. So I booked a train ticket instead of a plane ticket, so that I knew 12 hours, I'm not going anywhere.
So you could sit in one spot and write for 12 hours.
And I think that's the best way. And I just had blank sheets of paper and a pen, and later on I transcribed it, but it was like, I'm just going to start writing, and then whatever it is, I'm going to accept that that's the first scene. In hindsight, it was not the best scene in the musical, and extensive rewrites would have been good. But at the time, it was like, you just have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Once you start, rewriting is much easier than writing.
It was a different world in the 1930s. No iPhone, no TV, no treatment for herpes. There were commies in Russia and fascist Italians. Civilization was held captive by Prussian shenanigans. But our little tale takes us to the Austrian hills and a naval captain battered by life's bitter ills. So put out of your mind any copyright infringement malarkeys. Sit back and prepare for the sound of Nazis.
What I find interesting is you said, because obviously at the very start of this, you said you weren't funny as a kid, or you at least didn't think you were funny.
I probably thought I was funny.
Yeah, right.
But I don't feel like I'm a fun guy.
So how do you think you become a comedian, or do you think that's always in you, or did you learn to become a comedian?
My parents went to a Unitarian church. It's like the most non-religious church.
Yeah.
It's like a secular, pardon me, it's basically like atheists get together. Like, no one believes anything. And they're just like, maybe there's a God, maybe there's not, we don't know, but we all get together
This
once
is a
week.
just-in-case church.
Yeah, this is like, maybe, we don't know. So we'd go there, and then when I was very young, I got to give a speech. I would have been like 12, 13. And it was part of I think, again, it was a debate. It was something like whether or not Santa is real. I remember doing it, and it was like just 60 people, just making him laugh, just having a joke. It's the best feeling ever.
Yeah. I know what it's like. I mean, you do, because, see, but I have this thing where I feel like down the pub having a few beers, I can make a few people laugh, just, being, mucking around. But it's the thing of how do you take that joking around in the pub to being on a stage where people are expecting you to make them laugh.
That's the bizarre thing. So that is why comedians, I think, aren't always funny people, because the skill set of a comedian is not, are you the funniest person? It's, can you strip away all the things that aren't funny and get in the way and mean that you're not often funny, like all the things that mean you're not reliably funny, and just purge them from yourself. And that's not a lighthearted thing to do.
But it's funny you say it, because when you say it's, with comedians, it's not the funniest person in the room.
Yeah.
Because like I work with Dave Hughes, and everyone's like, oh God, he must be hilarious all the time. I'm like, well, he's not in here cracking jokes like in centre. Like, I mean, he's a funny, he can be a funny guy.
That's the thing, people can be funny.
But he just comes in, he does his thing, and, he's not like he's always on trying to, crack jokes.
Like anyone at that top level in Australia who I know is not. Like, they'll just be backstage. People are just backstage looking at their phone. A comedy green room is one of the bleakest places. There was one man behind me who, someone took a big mark inside 50, and he shouted out very energetically, "He's playing like there's no tomorrow!" Woo! Yeah, he's playing like there's no tomorrow! And, it's great. I'm on board with what I think that man is trying to express, but I don't think he's paid any real heed to how anyone would act at a football game if there were no tomorrow, if death were rushing in and that was the end of everything. If I were a footballer and there's a comet, we're all going to die very soon. I think, number one, I'd leave the field. And I'd get in a car. There's no tomorrow. Mum can't stop me. And then there's a couple of people I'm going to run down. We're all dead, for sure, but the satisfaction, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, it feels so good. And then, I don't know, then I'd lie on the ground weeping and screaming and crying and praying. And then I might take a big mark inside 50, who can say? And then I think my attitude to sexual consent would really change. Although I'm a footballer in this scenario, so maybe by not all that much.
All right, so if you were in my position, you were thinking about doing your very first stand-up. Say you've done no stand-up now.
Yeah.
All right, and you were thinking about doing your first stand-up. Where would you draw your...
I'm coughing so much.
You are coughing a lot.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have a big cough. You know what it is? I quit smoking.
Right.
It's all just,
so it's your lungs getting rid of the black stuff. I've been there.
When did you quit smoking? I've never known you to smoke. Did you take it up when you got...
No.
You forced
My
it?
wife that's sitting in the room here
Me?
made me quit smoking.
Oh, gee. My lady might have.
Do you think
Got me into it.
Do you think that's speaking of partners and stuff like that? A lot of comedians go to that, especially family, and that sort of stuff. Do you think that's purely because it's relatable and it's guaranteed to get a laugh?
I think it's relatable. It's definitely not guaranteed to get a laugh. I've seen a lot of people do some very bad
Family,
my wife material,
Yeah.
but interestingly, it feels subversive now in a way that it never has before. The powers that be and the comedy world basically don't want you to talk about bourgeois life and domestic dramas. That's considered hack. It's considered old-fashioned. And even the fact that you would go like, men are like this and women are like this, the fact that you would even say there were gender norms is a controversial thing now. If I was like, when I'm on stage, I'm doing jokes about my girlfriend. I'm like, my girlfriend like this because women do this thing. Once you generalize about women, there will be a chick without a sense of humor. And I'm getting nods from the lady here. Ladies know what I'm talking about. And they're like, no, it's generalizing. Not everybody. It's like, Jesus.
Why do certain comedians go for the family? Is that because that's all they know?
It works. That's the first. So when I started dating Tay, who's my girlfriend, my comedy just like took a huge leap forward because I was just doing light and jolly jokes about her. Like I'm trying to remember like the first joke I wrote about her. I was like, my name's James. My girlfriend's name is Taylor. It's annoying because people at parties are like, oh, James Taylor.
Yeah.
But it's way worse for a friend of mine. His name's Charles. His girlfriend's name is Manson Family Death Squad, which is just like a silly joke. But even like you can get away with having a silly joke because the audience is immediately like, oh, he's got a girlfriend.
Yeah.
That's nice. And she has a name and she's a real human being and he seems to care about her somewhat and they have experiences together. Just makes you a real person. And so that is partially why people do it. I mean, we exist through our relationships with other people. That's the only way we have a self. And it's just no one wants to see another guy get up and talk about himself and his internal. When you wake up and life is pain. Tell us another one.
I must admit, I've seen a comedian. I remember seeing a guy on the Gold Coast, comedian. He's an older dude. He was just an angry man that I think was trying to turn it into comedy, and it just wasn't enjoyable to watch.
It's pretty. I've seen some wonderful fuck ups on stage over the years, and it's so much better to watch than just people who do an okay job.
Well, what's been your worst gig?
Oh, my worst gig for me?
Yeah.
Oh, man. At the peak of my being like a weird guy phase, I was at like Elizabeth Community Centre in Adelaide. And I think I like tried reading them Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And I was like making some point about like, I have no idea. I have zero idea why any of that happened. And I just remember not even hate, bemusement. Why are you here? Why are you speaking to us? Who thought this was a good idea? It was really unpleasant.
What about best gig?
There was a gig in Perth a couple months ago that was lovely in Fremantle. It was just a bunch of people who I really liked were on, and I'd been alone for like 2 weeks, and my girlfriend had just come to town. I was staying for a few days. It was the biggest room I'd played in probably like a year and a bit. It was like 450.
Shit.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
It was like at a gala.
Is that scary? Do you?
It was a bit scary, but also because I hadn't tried. I'd done like comedy clubs before. That sounds like the Comic Store in Sydney, which I'd done is like 300 people, and that had gone well. But it was this specific set of jokes where it was like, I want to be able to do these for everybody. I want this to be my like. If I just leave one thing to the world, it's these jokes, and everyone can like them. And I did them in front of what wasn't a proper comedy audience. And there were a lot of them, and they were older, and they could have hated it, and it went really well. But the other thing about that I really liked is there was a grand piano on stage.
Oh, so you get to play.
Well, before the show started, I was playing it and I was like, can I play this as people come in? Just jokingly. The guy who was running it was like, yeah, sure. I don't care. And he let me sit and play the piano as people were coming in. I got to joke around with the audience.
Right, so they got to see you a bit first before you came on, and then they've already got that familiarity when you come on stage.
I don't know a lot of good songs on the piano, but I think we played Piano Man 3 times. But it was just about the happiest that I've ever been on stage.
The more I chat with comedians, I think the more nervous I get, which was kind of not the idea of this. It was kind of to get some really good ideas, which I am getting, but to make me more confident. So it's amazing when you actually chat to comedians about what they do. This stand-up comedy stuff is not easy at all, which I'm learning more and more. There's usually a part in the podcast where it gets interrupted with a sponsorship announcement about something to do with cooking or shaving or something like that. But I have no sponsors, so that's fine. If you want to sponsor the podcast, hey, get in touch. We'd love to get a sponsor. That would be sweet. Don't forget, if you like the podcast, please leave us a review and also sign up so that you get instant downloads every time I release an ep. Next episode is going to be with the very funny Melbourne comedian Matt Stewart.
You know, your first mic spot, those bits you do that day, the ones you keep will get better from there.
Yeah.
You know, the difference is on radio, on recorded stuff. That's recorded forever.
True.
It's unlikely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend anyone organising like a film crew to come down and record
Your first. Well, you say that though. My idea is for like at the very end of this, for my very first one, is to record it and put it as part of this podcast.
That's something I definitely would not. You will definitely regret it, but you know, it'll be really nice.
So much better about this experiment.
Good.
Absolutely. I loved my chat with Matt. He was a very, very nice guy and very, very supportive of what I'm doing. We chatted for, I think, just over an hour. So look forward to hearing that chat. But right now, back to more of my chat with Adelaide comedian James McCann. Do you think there's a formula for writing comedy? Do you think there's because I know when I've spoken to Amos in the past, he's spoken about rhythm. Rhythm
is a big part of it.
There's a rhythm to gags. I can't remember he was explaining it to me at one point where he's like, da-dum, da-dum, boom, da-dum, da-dum, boom. Like, you just got this.
That's basically, I try and do it like when I'm running a Word document in a size 12 times New Roman font to try and have a good gag before I have to have a line break. And it doesn't always work out like that. But it's like 7 seconds. Is basically what you want. But even then, that's not really comedy. That's what you use to sharpen and improve comedy and make it really strong. But the heart of comedy has to be a really funny idea that you can communicate to people simply.
Because, let me run something past you. I was talking to, I was getting my hair cut the other day, and the guy cutting my hair, we were talking about going to the footy. Yeah. And he said to me, he goes, it's crazy. He goes, the prices of things at the footy are just ridiculous. He said, I was buying a burger and a couple of bits and pieces. He said, before I paid, I was like, oh, can I just get some sauces or something? Yeah. And he's like, it was $10 before. And then she goes, that's $10, 60 thanks. And he's like, I just got 2 sauces. You got like 30 cents for a sauce.
Yeah.
So then I'm thinking, then in my head, I'm thinking the funny side of that is, you get ticket scalpers out the front. Yeah. What about scalping condiments?
That's good. Yeah, that's a bit all right. That's good.
But then I'm thinking that but then I'm like, well, how do you turn that into a joke? Because I can't just go up on stage. You couldn't go on stage and you go, oh, I was at the footy the other day. Oh, I was scalping sauce.
You could just go and say, they made me pay for sauce at the footy. Have you seen this? And people will go, oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's about finding that relatable.
It's like, I'm starting to wish there was a black market for sauce at the football. Just get a scalper out front. And so it's just like how fast and how efficiently and how secretly can you put the information. Comedy is about, like a poem is often about how much meaning you can put into a thing. You soak it with meaning and, the poet could mean this or that. But comedy is like you want one meaning and you want everybody to have that meaning at the same time and then shift it very vividly. So like talking about the hairdresser at the start is a distraction. And if that doesn't come into it, that has to go. Then it has to be probably you. Whatever you're buying, that could be a distraction. Like a meat pie might be a distraction. You can just go like chips. Chips are the easiest thing because people go chips and sauce. But even then, the fact that it has to be at the footy for the scalpers tag to work at the end.
Yeah.
But that could even come later because that's sort of a more complicated idea. You don't want people's attention span to wander for a second.
All right. Well, James McCann, it's been an absolute pleasure having you in.
It has just been a pleasure catching up with you.
How's your radio show going before we go?
I think really good.
You want to give it a plug?
Yes, Amelia, James and Hazy.
Would you give up comedy for a full-time radio job, as in Monday to Friday?
I would give up. I don't want to say anything in case at some point a contractual obligation, they get this and like, you said you wouldn't do it. I would certainly tour less. I would love to do, breakfast show. On more than one day a week. Our show's great though.
Yeah.
Or a drive show. Look, if anyone out there is booking a national drive show, I know a whole lot of people's contracts are up at the end of the year.
As we speak, this year's a very tumultuous
I think
one.
all of them are up.
Every
is that
single
correct?
one, yeah.
I'm right here, radio today.
Apart from Carl and Jackie.
Right about
everyone's up.
They're breakfast though.
Oh, well, yeah, but I mean, even most of the breakfast teams are up as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
This year, yeah.
What?
Well, they're just all out of contract. Their contracts have just come to an end, so they've got to re-sign.
Make a game plan, GM.
Jiggle around.
And your game plan should include James McCann. He loves radio and he loves you.
On that note, James McCann, mate, thank you so much. You want to plug a show or anything? Well, I don't know when this is going to air, so if you plug a show, it might be finished.
I've got a Facebook page.
Yeah, go on then.
Go to that.
Give it a plug.
It's James Donald Forbes McCann. James Donald Forbes McCann.
Thank you for coming in, buddy.
Thank you for having me.
Just an absolute, genuinely nice dude. So if you get the chance to go and see James in anything that he's doing, whether it be a comedy play about Nazis or his stand-up comedy as a solo guy, make sure you go check him out. Thank you so much indeed for listening to another episode of Sit Down to Stand Up. What are you waiting for? If you enjoyed that one, there's another one waiting for you right now. Me chatting with Matt Stewart. So go on, get into it. Don't forget, sign up and leave us a review. Thank you for listening to another episode of Sit Down to Stand Up.